Imagine what if, in a world of managers and software can't write software, the chief technology officer can't code, executives can't execute. Yeah, this is truly Boeing's world today. The giant aerospace's humiliation was plain for the world, since they failed to build a spacecraft that could perform the most basic function, safely ferrying astronauts to and from the ISS. What a shame for a legendary that left its footprint in the dawn of the U.S. aerospace industry. So why did it end up so badly? Elon Musk recently exposed why the Starliner project in particular, and Boeing in general, failed. Find out everything in today's episode of Techmap. The tension hearing between Boeing's boss and the angry U.S. senators in Washington has paved the way for a dark period for the aerospace giant. Following the Senate federal, it's turned to U.S. prosecutors, who are about to decide to whether criminally charge the company for violating a settlement related to 2 fatal crashes of the 737 MAX plane. At the same time, the Boeing Starliner spacecraft has been stranded on the ISS for nearly half a month, with no promise of a return date. The situation grew more serious as it was piled on blunder. The incidents on Boeing's main aircraft lines and its spacecraft are what the engineers of the firm could predict. The lack of transparency in quality and safety, the weak management apparatus chasing profit rather than quality, and the toxic culture contribute to Boeing's fall down. Elon Musk, SpaceX CEO, who is notoriously for the correct philosophies in operating and managing a tech company, pointed out another root cause: the operator's educational background. The CEO of an aircraft company should know how to design aircraft, not spreadsheets. Of course, it's not the first time he mentioned the cause of the failure of a Titan. On May 7th, after Boeing's first launch attempt was canceled, Elon chided Boeing on X for employing too many non-technical managers. A technical manager generally oversees the development, implementation, and maintenance of technological company systems and processes, including troubleshooting any potential issues. Non-technical managers, on the other hand, tend to be focused on broader aspects of a company like strategic planning, communication, and decision-making. Also, in 2022, Musk opined about non-technical managers. I strongly believe that all managers in a technical area must be technically excellent. Managers in software must write great software, or it's like being a cavalry captain who can't ride a horse. Elon Musk has applied this principle in building SpaceX's foundation. Everything started from him. When the rocket concept started to grow in his mind, he learned a lot about the fundamentals of rocket design and astrodynamics from reading books. The strong background in physics and engineering benefited him a lot to understand the principles of rocketry. Through the interview between Elon Musk and the YouTuber Everyday Astronaut, his knowledge of Starship and spaceflight has incredibly impressed the viewers.
In hindsight...
Who's saying we don't know what we're doing? And what have they done?
Oh, exactly. That's
it's easy to be an armchair rockets engineer.
Exactly.
SpaceX's board of directors, although come from many different fields, also have working experience with Tesla Motors, PayPal, computer services company Netscape, and Impulse Space Propulsion. Elon Musk, while working with them, also learned a lot to perfect his knowledge. This is the core weapon driving SpaceX to become dominant in spaceflight currently. So how about you? Do you agree with Elon Musk's idea? As always, say yes if you agree. Anyway, if you find this useful, please give us a share, like, and subscribe. Your support will be a huge motivation for us to release more quality videos in the future. And now let's come back. Boeing's leadership, on the other hand, is pure bean counters and has little knowledge of rockets. As a result, Boeing, from being the gold standard of human spaceflight, took itself to the tragically incompetent clown. Boeing was once a company of engineers, by engineers for engineers. We see its heritage in space back to the earliest days of the U.S. venturing into space. Its fingerprints appear on major aspects of Apollo and the International Space Station, for example. But now it has become a corporation of speculators, by speculators, for speculators. Thanks to the merger with McDonnell Douglas nearly 30 years ago, Boeing's leadership has transformed from high-quality and loyal engineers to finance guys. And even the current Boeing CEO, Dave Calhoun, has a degree in accounting. McDonnell Douglas management proudly proclaimed they transformed a mere engineering firm into a viable Fortune 500 corporation. What we see today is the result of this transformation. Worse, under Dave's era, the true engineers were treated badly. In the interview with 60 Minutes Australia, Boeing's whistleblowers shared the shocking truth about the quality assurance at Boeing.
They didn't want to have to wait on quality. They were in a hurry all the time to get the airplane finished and moved from one position to the next.
So if you're slowing them down, you're costing them money?
Yes, time and money.
Additionally, when the FAA went and toured the facility, they found one door seal being lubricated with Dawn liquid dish soap and cleaned with a wet cheesecloth, and another was being checked with a hotel room key card. This is what Boeing has done with the commercial aviation sector, which makes up a total of 44% of Boeing's revenue. So how about defense, space, and security with 32% of the share? Are we sure that this secondary sector will be focused more in terms of safety and quality? This raises more concern about Starliner's capability to bring astronauts home safely. Therefore, a rescue mission on a much more reliable vehicle, SpaceX Dragon for example, is very needed. After the successful liftoff on June 5th, astronauts Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams soared into space and docked with the ISS after a long, tough journey on the Starliner. They should have stayed in there for roughly 1 week, but the difficult problems on Starliner have left their return date still up in the air, and NASA is now furiously trying to help solve the problem. Many experts suppose that Boeing rival SpaceX could serve as a lifeboat in this case, bringing them home board its Crew Dragon spaceship. Rudy Rodolfi, former Space System Commander and Space Technology Acquisition Manager, said, "Good news is that they are on the ISS and not like the Apollo 13 trying to get home from the moon. But I wouldn't be surprised if someone at NASA is getting a SpaceX Dragon capsule ready for a rescue mission." According to NASA's internal schedule, Dragon Crew 9 will occur no earlier than August. It will arrive at the space station for a short-duration handover with NASA's SpaceX Crew 8 mission. Sharing the same idea, Mike Gruntman, professor of astronautics at the University of Southern California, said, "It is more likely that SpaceX would be able to provide an additional launch in the foreseeable future to bring the astronauts back." Katsuo Kurabayashi, professor of aerospace engineering at New York University, added, "Given the current situation with the Starliner, it is possible that NASA could decide to use an alternative spacecraft, like SpaceX's Crew Dragon, to bring the astronauts home safely. The final decision would depend on the severity of the helium leak, the feasibility of repairs, and the logistics of arranging another spacecraft for the return mission." Apparently, Boeing does not want to do that because the outcome will serve as a severe blow to the bruised reputation of the firm. Boeing has spent about $1.5 billion in cost overruns beyond its initial $4.5 billion contract with NASA in hopes of making Starliner a second option to reach the ISS. NASA and Boeing officials have reiterated that the current problems aboard the Starliner don't indicate the need for SpaceX to lend a hand. Michael Lembeck, an aerospace engineering associate professor at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, who served as a consultant for Boeing's spaceflight division from 2009 to 2014, told that the Starliner is still likely to be Wilmore and Williams' ride back to Earth. "Right now, I'd say the need for SpaceX to step up is very low," Lembeck said. "We would have to see a big problem come up in the next couple of days to warrant that reaction." $32.8 million is what Dave Calhoun is currently paid as CEO of Boeing. More importantly, it was up 45% over last year and up from $22.6 million in 2022. Meanwhile, 32,000 Boeing employees in the Pacific Northwest just got 1% wage increases over 8 years. Yeah, the workers got 1% in 8 years, and the CEO got 45% in 1 year. And see what was created during his era. A destructive weapon, namely Starliner, and its direct victims, NASA astronauts, are being held on the ISS. While NASA officials have sought to cool the tension down, NASA astronauts just declared this about Boeing Starliner: big trouble. The Starliner's glitches, including helium leaks and thrusters, abruptly stopped working, leaving NASA astronauts Suni Williams and Butch Wilmore stranded on the ISS for 2 more weeks than its original plan, turning their mission from 1 week to 3 weeks. The station is a cramped space, and ironically, they have been stuck there since June 6th. The given reason is to allow engineers on the ground to scramble to learn more about issues that plagued the first leg of their journey. NASA officials are still confident that there is no reason to believe Starliner won't be able to bring the astronauts back home, though
so far we don't see any scenario where Starliner is not going to be able to bring Butch and Sunny home. We really want to work through the remainder of the data.
Retired NASA astronaut Leroy Chow shares the same idea about Starliner's re-entry capability. In an interview with CNN on June 20th, he said that the problems on this vehicle are not extremely serious.
Helium leaks, thruster failures, these are kind of medium to light problems because it doesn't really threaten the mission at this point.
As he said, the helium leaks are pretty small, and NASA announced that they can tolerate about 100 times what's currently leaking. 4 out of 5 failed thrusters are solved, and 1 remains disabled. With such positive signs, they should not keep Starliner coming home safely.
NASA and Boeing just being extra conservative, don't want to be complacent, want to go through everything. And so just being a little bit extra cautious, that's why the mission is being extended.
However, he also emphasized that NASA's typical culture always looks for contingency plans. And in the very worst case, if Starliner cannot come back,
well, of course, Butch and Sunny can safe haven at the ISS for, basically a number of months at least. And so that would be time to get a replacement spacecraft up, probably a SpaceX Dragon spacecraft. Then NASA would have to rejumble the traffic model, but certainly a SpaceX Dragon could be brought up to bring Butch and Sunny home.
Similarly, Michael Lembeck, an aerospace engineering associate professor of practice at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, who was a consultant for Boeing's spaceflight division from 2009 to 2014, once shared, "The embarrassing backup is that a Crew Dragon would have to go and retrieve the astronauts." Lembeck said, "The spacecraft could be sent up with 2 crew members and sent back with 4, and that would probably be the way home." And as Leroy said, a rescue mission is just used in the worst case, because the problems Starliner is experiencing are relatively minor.
So I fully expect that on the 26th, per the current plan, Butch and Sunny will make it back safely in the Starliner.
So how about you? Do you believe in Starliner's re-entry capability? Say yes if you agree. Anyway, if you find this useful, please give us a share, like, and subscribe. Your support will be a huge motivation for us to release more quality videos in the future. And now let's come back. Another example given in the interview to strengthen the fragile belief in Starliner is the case of the Voyager 1 spacecraft, launched in 1977. Being the most distant human-made spacecraft ever launched far beyond the orbit of Pluto, Voyager is the riding point for all humanity as it hurtles through interstellar space. The spacecraft met trouble last November when it stopped sending any data back to Earth, beginning the greatest crisis in the history of the fabled Voyager program. Due to the obstacles in understanding its root cause, NASA scientists nearly wanted to sideline it. However, after tireless 5-month working to save the spacecraft, the Voyager 1 probe finally phoned home in April. Boeing and NASA may have been holding out hope for a miracle on Starliner like Voyager 1. But unlike Voyager 1, Starliner is essentially a manned mission, so the tension will be exponential. The long-term delay in bringing the vehicle back home has left the astronauts stuck in an ironic situation, and the Starliner team grappling with the unplanned side of the mission. To be honest, the Boeing CFT astronauts are also somewhat aware of the risks that await them before launch.
I always find stuff, and we are going to continually find stuff. Everything's not going to be absolutely perfect as we fly the spacecraft. We feel very safe and comfortable how the spacecraft flies, and we have backup procedures in case we need those.
Wilmore also had a famous quote for the media in March 2024. "The expectation from the media should not be perfection," he said. "This is a test flight. Flying and operating in space is hard. It's really hard, and we're going to find some stuff. That's expected. It's the first flight where we are integrating the full capabilities of this spacecraft. You don't get visibility in those programs in those flights," he said. "So don't have that expectation, please. It's not going to be perfect, but it's not going to be bad either. We wouldn't go if we thought that. It's going to be things that are rectifiable, and the whole thing is to get up, get to the space station, and get back, and we're going to show that it has that capability." I don't know how you feel, but my hunch is it seems like they are trying to pretend that everything is fine. Let's look at how happy they were after opening the hatch and entering the ISS. I think anyone in their situation would act the same way. See how Boeing whistleblowers ended their lives. All of them were retaliated, verbal harassment and threats, and even physical violence. The recent hearing has shown them all. Talking about the extended time on ISS, NASA also doesn't rule out the possibility of Starliners spending up to 45 days at the orbiting laboratory if needed. It's not uncommon for astronauts to unexpectedly extend their stay aboard the space station for days, weeks, or even months. But the situation will further tarnish Boeing's reputation, which has already been notorious for a long list of blunders by the Starliner program. I think Dave Calhoun was recently too tired given tough questions on Capitol Hill regarding the Boeing plane crash. Chances are he also does not want to come back there again to explain the Starliner mishaps on ISS. Besides that, making Starliner operational as soon as possible is also NASA's demand to keep up with its upcoming plans. Dependence on a single supplier like SpaceX, regardless of crew or cargo mission, would somehow worry the agency. So if something does transpire with Dragon, something serious that grounds the ship for a while, we are essentially going to return the time before SpaceX Dragon comes online. A November 2019 report by NASA's Office of Inspector General found that since 2017, when NASA targeted commercial crew flights to start, the agency spent about $1 billion on 12 additional Soyuz seats to ensure continued access to the station, while both Boeing Starliner and SpaceX Dragon encountered delays. Anyway, we believe that SpaceX will never let its Dragon spacecraft hit any trouble in this context, given that Starliner is too weak to ferry astronauts, and Sierra Space's Dream Chaser has not launched any time. NASA also does not want to order any products from Russia, especially in the current sensitive political context. Given the Boeing Starliner scandals, even astronauts trained to face the most dangerous situations are afraid to bet their lives on this spacecraft. And their insecurity is escalating while the first Starliner operational mission, following its crew flight test, is coming closer. Public pressure once again forced NASA to make a vital decision, canceling this dangerous mission. NASA expressed its caution on Starliner's crewed flight test because it is its first attempt with humans aboard.
The whole team has been focused on understanding what's happening with this vehicle for the crewed flight test and our plan for returns.
However, that does not mean they are confident on Starliner 1, also called Post-Certification Mission 1, PCM-1. Boeing Starliner 1 is planned to be the first operational crewed mission of the Boeing Starliner to the ISS as part of the Commercial Crew Program. It will be the fourth orbital flight mission of the Starliner overall. It is scheduled to launch no earlier than early 2025, transporting members of a future ISS expedition. That time is simultaneous with the Crew 10 mission, NASA's 10th operational flight on Dragon. Thus, there is likely a consideration between SpaceX Dragon or Boeing Starliner for this slot. The answer is off the table. The astronauts themselves would not dare to risk their lives on this much-troubled vehicle, especially since this marks its first operational flight. Even a Russian cosmonaut is not expected to be on board, as Roscosmos has stated they do not want to put Russian cosmonauts on Starliner until it has flown successful commercial crew program flights. For those who don't know, in 2022, Joel Montalbano, the manager of NASA's International Space Station program, unveiled to the media the Russian-US agreement on integrated space missions. According to him, after the Boeing crew flight test passes, the agency will do an update to the agreement and work with Russian colleagues such that its long-term goal is to have integrated crews on all the missions. They wanted to have a couple of Boeing missions moving forward, and right after CFT, they will be putting that into work. Unfortunately, at present, given the technical glitches and delays with no sign of the end, everybody has not even known when Starliner could come back home, let alone conduct its first operational mission. If NASA still insists on sending people on Starliner next year, they would have to push Starliner 1's date further to the next available slot, August or September at the earliest, for example. Or it is after Starliner's several cargo missions to verify this vehicle is reliable. Another option is to shift Starliner's crewed version to the cargo version forever. Human safety is always the top priority. This is confirmed by Steve Stitch, the program manager for NASA's Commercial Crew Program. Although he did not specify details, he hinted that Starliner 1 is a long-term goal.
We haven't looked ahead too much to Starliner 1. As Mark said, we know we've got to go, address the helium leaks. We're not going to go fly another mission like this with the helium leaks. We've got to go understand what the rendezvous profile is doing that's causing the thrusters to have low thrust and then be deselected by the flight control teams.
The detailed plan, as he said, will be discussed in summer and after the vehicle returns to Earth.
But we'll do so at the right time, later this summer, lay out all the work in front of us after this vehicle comes back with the crew, and then figure out what the path forward is.
The latest news shows that Boeing Starliner's stay in ISS will be increased by 4 days, allowing the team to review all available data about the performance of the Starliner spacecraft before clearing the vehicle to return to Earth.
It go to undock, and it will undock at the appropriated time, which is 2:10 GMT or 9:10 Central on June 25th.
This would set up a landing at 4:51 ET on June 26th at the White Sands Test Facility in New Mexico. Despite the postponement, uncertainties, and concerns, Stitch did not forget to emphasize how much the astronauts loved this vehicle and this mission.
They were anxious, excited, and happy to be there. You can tell every time they get in Starliner, they love the vehicle, they love Starliner, and they're so happy to be a part of the mission.
It's clear NASA and Boeing have still been determined not to call any rescue mission and let Starliner carry Suni Williams and Butch Wilmore by itself back home. Well, nothing can change their minds, so let's pray for the two astronauts to have a safe trip. And that just about wraps it up for today's episode. Thank you, and we look forward to seeing you next time.